Another beautiful sunny day out here in South Africa, and those of you who know me and follow my channel know that I cannot waste an opportunity like this. I have to throw my leg over a motorcycle, go ride, review, test a bike. So just recently I was at Biker's Warehouse, picked up a Husqvarna 901, rode and reviewed that one for you guys. And today I went back to Biker's Warehouse and picked up something slightly different. Again, it's a Husqvarna, but this time a 701. So looking at this bike, what is it? Is it an adventure bike? Is it a touring bike? But when I first threw my leg over her, I realized this is more hardcore. This is more of an MX bike. So where exactly does this bike fit in, and what is this all about? In my review of the Husqvarna 901, I actually discussed and went through the whole history, and quite an interesting history of Husqvarna. Started way back in 1689, and then back in, I think it was 1903, they started producing bicycles, and then when they won a government tender in 1918, they actually started producing motorcycles, including engines. So there's over a century of technology in the bike. Also, I discussed the racing history, some of their achievements. I also briefly went through the ownership changes. I mean, it was Husqvarna Armament, then it went to Electrolux, then it was bought out by Gagiva, then they had the breakaway company of Husqvarna, and then BMW acquired them, and lately the Perrier Industries, so they are in the same stable as KTM today. If you want to know more about that story of the history of Husqvarna, please have a look at my episode on the review of the Husqvarna 901. Now, this bike is super interesting because those of you who follow me on my channel, you will know that I'm a big fan of the twin motors, the two-piston motors, because they have this high torque, whether it's a boxer motor or a 90 degree or 45, 75 degree twin. It has high torque, and those are really stunning motors. Now, immediately when you turn the key and pull off, you know this is something special. It took me back to the old days when I started biking. That's the singles, and the singles we called the thumpers back in the day. And I read up something on the 701. The guys referred to it, some journalists referred to it as the super thumper, and I think that is a really cool way of describing this motor. I mean, the single has been evolved. I mean, most of the Japanese manufacturers have forgotten to evolve and develop a single, and now here you have KTM and Husqvarna taking the single and developing it even further. So the old thumper as we know it is now, call it a super thumper. So really cool vibe, took me back in the day, and I really enjoyed it. It's something really different. Now this model is a Husqvarna 701 Enduro, and they call it a dual sport machine. I think it's one of the most formidable in the lineup of that Swedish brand Husqvarna, and the reason I say that is because they are drawing on their decades of experience on enduro racing, MX racing, the whole pedigree and their development, their technology, leading edge, winning championships, and put it in a road going machine with all the MX and Enduro technology and lessons they've learned over the past. Now, with this model, I think Husqvarna achieved the perfect blend of, let's call it, high performance and functionality. You have an Enduro race bike, MX bike for the road. It's sleek and modern. The capabilities of this bike would be to conquer the urban environment and to play in dangerous off-road conditions. I would say this would be taking versatility to new levels. If I were to put this in a bracket with competition, put it up against obviously the sister company KTM 690 Enduro R, maybe the Aprilia Touareg 660, although that's a parallel twin. The other one would be a Kawasaki KLR 650. Now, just going through the motor and its specs, this is a single cylinder, 4-stroke liquid cooled, 4-valve motor, single overhead cam, and the exact CC is a 693. That's why the sister company, the other stable, calls it a KTM 690. Husqvarna calls it a 701. This motor then goes through a clutch, chain is the final drive, and a 6-speed box. Power of this motor is 74 horsepower at 8,000 RPM, and the Newton meter torque is 73 Newton meters at 6,500 RPM. Now, just to compare that against the 901 we had a look at last time, which is a 889cc motor, that would be a parallel twin, double overhead cam, also 6-speed chain, final drive. The horsepower of that bike was 105. This is 74. The torque was 100 on the 901. This is 73. So completely different bike, a smaller bike, single piston, different purpose. Tank size on this bike, and quite interestingly, the tank sits at the back, the filler is here at the back, and the tank is actually at the back and under your seat. Good for weight distribution, low down. Tank capacity is 13 liters. The seat height is actually, it's a tall bike. It's 920 mil height. The adventure bike was 854, so there's already a 75 or 70 mil difference in height between those two. The dry weight of this bike is 146 kilogram, which is super light with all the plastics and that. The adventure version 901 was 204, so 146, really cool. The ground clearance on this bike is also higher. This ground clearance on this bike is 270 mil, and the adventure was 252 mil. The wheels on this bike also 21 inch in front, 18 inch at the back, shod with a 90 and a 140. Aluminium alloy wheels, spoked. You have your brakes, Brembo twin piston calipers up front, 300 mil disc. At the back you have a Brembo single piston with a 240 mil disc. Suspension on this bike is also the WP suspension, the Explorer, a 250 mil travel up front and 250 mil travel, which is quite a lot more than the bigger bike, the 901, that only had roughly, I think it was 220 in front and 215 at the rear. So as you can see, quite a different bike, not an adventure bike, much lighter, and just a very, very different bike. So when you think adventure bike, no, I suppose you could use it, but your top speed, you run out of top speed on this bike. It gets you tickets quite quickly, but I don't think this thing will put you in jail like some of the bigger bikes would do. Electronics on this bike would be like lean sensitive traction control. You have your ABS, and you have 2 switchable riding modes on it. So minimalistic on electronics, but really the technology is there in a light enduro off-road bike that you can use for the road. You can get a rally kit for this bike. Oh, the bike also has, the 2022 model has what Husqvarna calls an easy shift up and down, which is a quick shifter. And even the trellis frame that you see is a super light chrome moly. So everything about this bike is lightweight and a real good combination. They draw on their decades of experience on the enduro racing. Looking at the accessories fitted to this bike, non-standard, Obviously, quickly you can see this frame at the back here for some soft shell panniers at the back if you want to go away for a weekend, a bit of touring. Here you have some bags either side up front. You also have fitted some spotlights and a taller screen, which is really useful and helps with the wind protection. Otherwise this would be a little bit on the small side, but I mean, you're also not going to get top speed. But if you're going off-road and it's a muddy terrain and you've got riders in front of you, this obviously also helps when you have roosters coming at you to keep your visor clean. One more thing before I jump on and go for a ride would be, I would like to share with you the sound of this bike. I mean, the sound of a thumper. It's also enhanced by this beautiful aftermarket Remus performance pipe with the carbon tip at the end. I mean, I always love loud pipes save lives, but it also gives a bike a soul and a character, and you enhance the sound of this thumper. Let me get it started quickly. That is a super cool sound, and you can hear that single firing away. That's old school. Love it. So I think I'm going to jump on this 701 Enduro, aka Super Thumper. As I mentioned earlier, the minute you swing your leg over this bike, you realize it's a very tall bike. The seat is a bench, very, very firm. Not much cushioning to speak about when it comes to street bikes, and an absolute blast on sand roads, because that's what it was made for. If you look down, this bench seat here goes right to the front by the clocks. This bike just wants to wheelie, pop up and make you feel like you're on an MX track. It's just so much fun. The suspension is not soggy in any way. It's quite firm, clearly set up for off-road, but I do think you can soften it just a little bit for the road purpose. But here, absolutely fantastic playing around. Clutch action is nice and light. The gear is hardcore, completely off-road style in my opinion, but fun, suited to this application. So don't wear shoes that are too soft on top without a cap, because you have to pull it up quite hard. huge torque, so you don't have to go through the gearbox like a hooligan. You've got the torque to just stay in one gear and ride it. Whether you want to throw roosters, keep it a gear lower, or if you just want to cruise, keep it a gear higher, but you don't have to hound through the gearbox chasing gears. You just give it some fun and just de-stress. Forget about work, forget about your day-to-day life. Obviously, if you gas it hard, you get a bit of a head shake. Okay, definitely that is well suited to scrambling, enduro, off-road. It's wild. It's wild. In a complete different category to adventure bikes. But here we go. It runs hard. And this is a bike that is definitely capable of giving you speeding fines, giving you good tickets. But I do think you're going to run out of revs at a top end, so it's not going to put you in jail. But we don't always run in the top speed. You're not running past 160 mile an hour, 160 kilometer an hour or 100 mile an hour continuously. So this bike is plenty fun. It's all about how fast can you get to that ticket. It's not about can you run that speed and get a ticket. The vibrations is actually very cool, and the sound of the single, the firing, it's brilliant. I love this Remus sound. The bike obviously very different to what I've tested before. It obviously it's refined in its own way as an enduro off-road. However, when you want to say refined compared to adventure bikes or road going bikes, no, this is a lot more crude, rudimentary, but it serves a purpose. It's all about lightness, 146 kilos dry weight, and 74 Newton meter, I think it was, or it's proper. This bike is about something completely different. It's about lightweight, high torque, acceleration, and a versatility of on and off-road. Most adventure bikes can do light off-roading and gravel roads. This is a lot more hardcore and can handle dangerous territory, rocky riverbeds. You got higher ground clearance, you got more suspension travel. It's much lighter, so you're not going to kill yourself if this thing leans over. And I'm just going to take her onto the highway, actually, to take an enduro bike onto the highway and see how it works. The stopping power is pretty good. The rear brakes nice and strong. You can on gravel roads really lock her up. A lot of fun. This is crazy. This is a hard bench type motocross seat. That super thumper, pulling hard. Here we go, rolling on. I am in 4th gear. I could have gone down and accelerated harder, but a little bit of a head shake, but good speed. Hooliganism, you can see a bit of the head shake coming through here. Wild. It's already ticket time, but not jail time just yet. I'm rolling off because it gets a little bit on the light side in front. Crazy amount of fun. Here we go, rolling on again. See, this is where she runs out of steam. It's quite slow, but for commuting, and I'm over the speed limit, running quite nicely. I think this screen is very useful. Dual purpose here on the highway, except for my shoulders right on the outside a little bit. I'm not being buffeted in any way. The helmet is not wobbling around, moving around, quite steady. So also on the off-road side of things, if there's a guy in front of you, if you're going in a group and they're throwing up roosters or stones, you are quite a bit protected. So It works really well. There you go, versatility. You could see I played a little bit off-road earlier today, and this thing is extremely competent. So very different to what I expected, having come off the 901, a really refined adventure bike, smooth. This is definitely a way more hardcore bike. The 701 Enduro, I'm not gonna say I'm gonna criticize it, because it's a different class of bike. It's not an adventure bike. It is more of the MX off-road, scramble and enduro bike. It has that feel, that hard bench. The suspension is not too bad here for highways, extremely good for off-road. I think you could soften it a notch for the main roads, but that is personal preference, whatever you enjoy. The bike is powerful enough to run the speeds. It is powerful enough to overtake should you want to. The torquiness of the motor, you're not chasing through the gearbox. Gearbox is hardcore compared to the refined adventure bike 901. However, very cool. Don't wear a soft shoe, because you really have to pull that lever up positively. For its purpose, great fun, because most of the off-road bikes that you take, you have to trailer to wherever you're going to go play. This is something you can commute there, go play, and then ride it home again. Oh, great sound. Takes me back to the old days of the thumpers. It's got nice grunt coming out of the corners. You're definitely not on a scooter where you have to worry about the traffic coming up behind you, taking you out. So as a commuter, super cool. Not too wide of an Enduro, not to be able to lane split. The mirrors, if you look, are in line or inside the actual handlebars not too wide. You're sitting very upright. I am flat-footed, but only one side. This leg is dangling. I cannot be flat-footed both sides. So if you're 5 foot or something like that, you will have a little bit of a problem. Here we go. We can do this. As you can see, plenty stonk in this motor to catch that gap and go and be in front. What's not to like? As an enthusiast of motorcycles, it's not about finding faults, it's about finding the joys this bike gives you. Such a cool sound. Thank you very much. The freedom of biking. Sunny day, and I'm out here, wind in the hair, having a blast. You cannot compare the adventure bikes or the 901 to this when it comes the off-road capabilities. This is absolutely next level. And as you can see, plenty stonk in this little motor to take you right to the front. Here we go. Recklessness a little bit, but this motor has got the stonk. Here we go. Nothing wrong with this motor. I think it'll top out somewhere by 160, and then there's nothing left. So from 130 onwards to roll on, it's not gonna push you forward. It climbs speed gradually. But once you get used to it, you anticipate it and ride accordingly. I think on fun factor, this bike definitely gets a 10 out of 10 from me. Nothing's flopping around or sloppy on this bike. If you look at this mirror, It works really well, nice and high, in line with the handlebars. You can see behind you, it's not shaking, it's not vibrating, even with this thumper. It's pretty solid. You're sitting upright in a relaxed, neutral position. So fatigue is not one of your enemies on a bike like this. To be honest, I'm extremely satisfied with the brakes. The stopping power of this bike is brilliant. It stops pretty well. It's a lot less weight to stop than your traditional adventure bike. That's 200 plus, all the way up to 250 kilos. So you're stopping 100 kilogram less. So these Brembos front and rear doing a fantastic job. I must say the rear brakes surprised me. They are nice and powerful. So in the gravel at first I had to adjust because it locked up. Once you got the feel of that, it's actually fun to lock up the back and help you turn. So the fun factor just grew. I hope you enjoyed this ride and review of this Husqvarna 701 with me. What a power bike. It's so much fun. That super thumper with this super cool light chassis. I don't know. I'm having a blast. I hope you enjoyed the review. If you did, please remember, hit that like button, give me a thumbs up, and most important of all, please hit that subscribe button to help me build the channel and help me bring you more of these cool bikes.